Blast imminent in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
Years of Delsan AIM. Delsan AIM was established in 1994 as a 50-50 ownership between AIM, belonging to Herbert Black, and Delsan Environmental Services, Inc. Delsan was originally owned by Dominic, Enzo, and Luis Santaguida, who combined the first letters of their first names with the first three letters of their last names to make the company name Delsan. The partnership between Delsan and AIM was formed to allow Delsan to work in Quebec, while enabling AIM to get into the demolition business. The original management of this partnership was under Luis Santaguida and Gary Mintz, and Delsan's head office started with only one desk and a couple of chairs on the second floor of AIM Montreal's office. The first project that Delsan AIM landed was the partial demolition of the Union Carbide plant, also called Petromont in Montreal East. Interesting enough, Delsan would return to the site 15 years later to completely decommission and demolish the Petromont Montreal East, as well as the Varennes site. Early into the Union Carbide project, management ran into some union issues. Delsan AIM, being new in the province of Quebec, still had to establish its reputation, and the unions wanted to push Delsan out of Quebec. Karim El-Khatib, who was at the time working for Delsan Ontario, was asked by Luis Santaguida to come up and help the Montreal team with the union issues. On site, Karim meets Lorenzo Rapatoni, whom at the time was working as a site clerk in 1994. Lorenzo was changing his career following a severe work-related incident while he was a surveyor. He worked very hard to convince management that Delsan could be successful in Quebec. Following the continued problems with the myriad of unions and the loss of production on site, Lorenzo suggested that Karim meet one of his acquaintances, Joe Missouri, to help solve the issues. After meeting Joe, Karim and Lorenzo decided to shut the current job down for the winter months to restart in the spring, hiring only from the Laborers International Union. This is when the professional relationship began between Karim, Lorenzo, and Joe. The more Karim worked with Lorenzo, the more he realized what an important asset Lorenzo was, and began to give him more and more responsibilities. Together, they tackled several other jobs in the Montreal area in collaboration with Joe Amaral, such as the demolition of the Parthenon jail. Through this, Lorenzo went from a site clerk to a project manager to finally becoming manager of Delsan AIM, while creating a solid friendship with Karim. As time went by, Karim realized that Lorenzo didn't require him to be there day to day to help him manage the Quebec operation, and decided that he would go back to Toronto. Funny enough, Lorenzo would say that this is when Karim abandoned him. In 1996, Delsan Environmental Services was sold to Philip Environmental Services. The partnership between AIM and Delsan was now between AIM and Philip Environmental Services. Then in 1998, Sean Murray purchased the Toronto Demolition Division of Philip Services, which gave Herbert Black the opportunity to purchase 100% of Delsan AIM Environmental Services, Inc. Following the complete acquisition, Herb noticed all the responsibilities that Lorenzo was taking on, as well as the quality of his work, and decided to elevate him to vice president. Lorenzo took on this role naturally, having Karim continue to help him with the engineering and drops, even though Karim was now at Murray Demolition. In parallel, the team was growing, and Delsan moved from a small office on the second floor of the AIM building to the basement, in a small space accommodating 4 desks and a small closed office. Delsan continued to grow to a point where so much space was needed that the estimation team was in the janitor's closet. At that time, in 1999, Delsan AIM had successfully completed approximately 60 projects, such as Seagram, EC McMasterville, GEON Shawinigan, and Vickers, and had evolved into a $10 million business. The company moved to 10,760A Henri Bourassa East, which became the official operations center, and Delsan finally had its own full office. The expansion also continued with the acquisition of Maxi Mega. Then in 2003, Delsan AIM landed the GM plant in St. Thérèse in partnership with Murray Demolition. As Delsan AIM was evolving and management practices with it, Lorenzo took advantage of this project to create and implement complete milestone schedules. Karim and Lorenzo spent a complete night creating the schedule for the whole project, all in French. The next day, the schedule needed to be presented to the GM management team, and after a whole night of work, Karim was too tired to assist. So the success of this initiative all rested on Lorenzo. Needless to say, he did very well. Lorenzo managed this project from there on, and perfected the procedures and forms that are still being used today. In the next few years, Delsan continued to obtain major contracts such as Cour d'Appel, Bridgestone, St. James Church, and the complete decommissioning of the pulp and paper plants of Abbotsby Consolidated, of Port Alfred, and Stephenville. Then, in 2007, a new challenge was in hand: Murdochville. This project was yet another piece of evolution, as it required the hiring of a full-time health and safety manager, as well as an environmental manager. Following this expansion, Delsan AIM continued to grow, as its reputation is not only as a demolition company, but as a full decommissioning company with complete environmental services. Delsan never stopped growing, continuing to obtain major projects such as Petromont-Varennes and Montreal East, the Dalhousie, Beaupré, Donnacona, and the Thunder Bay Abitibi Consolidated. In 2006, Sean Murray sold his company and Murray Demolition became Quantum Murray LP. In 2008, during a market crisis, Karim, who kept working the Toronto division through all ownership changes, was promoted to president of Quantum Murray LP, but decided to leave the company 2 years later due to professional opinion differences with other managers. Always thinking of the future and wanting to ensure the continued growth of Delsan, Lorenzo knew that the Ontario market had to be tackled on. For respect of Sean Murray and Karim, he withheld this desire for years, but the recent changes made this objective more than realistic. With Herb Black's approval, Lorenzo created a Toronto division with the support of Karim, who was at this point a longtime ally and friend. And this division has proven to be part of the continued success story of Delsan. In 2013, Delsan's Montreal office moved to 7825 Henri Bourassa into a newly renovated office space and continued to obtain and manage challenging projects. To keep expanding the services, Delsan AIM acquired HBT in 2015, a civil works demolition company. This extended yet again the services and expertise offered by Delsan. HBT completed several demolition projects, including bridges. In 2015, the HBT group began some work at the Turcotte Yards to obtain in 2017 the major highly complex demolition project of the Turcotte Interchange. In 2019, the Montreal head office moved into its newly constructed home in Laval with offices, garages, and a warehouse, all under the same roof for the first time since its creation. Delsan AIM now owns and operates over 75 excavators including high reaches, more than 300 attachments, a 1,600-ton jack-up hydraulic system for civil work, 232 smaller pieces of equipment, and more than 300 employees in Quebec and Ontario with more than $125 million in business. Delsan AIM has now become the largest decommissioning company in Canada, completing over 1,900 projects since its creation and being internationally recognized. Delsan AIM would like to thank all of its workers for their contribution in this success story. Altogether, we continue to prepare the future.
All stations, stand by for all clear. Stand by. I think that's a success.